Welcome to Becoming Social. This is one of a series of 3 conversations that the MA Innovation Management 2021 graduating class from Central St. Martin's are hosting with industry experts. My name is Ola Lella, and I'm a graduate of MA Innovation Management myself, and I will be the host today. Joining us, we have Alessandra Terumi Tomisawa, a innovation and creativity specialist and MBA professor, and as well Ananya Modi, the founder of All to Defy, and the graduates Alessia Catani, Renwu, and Vrinda Jain. So the main theme of the MA Innovation Management 2021 Graduate Showcase is becoming. For this panel discussion, we'll be discussing how to become social. We will explore topics such as food systems, influencers, and crowds. And this panel discussion focuses on how different intermediaries could serve as agents of innovation. As innovation managers, we see becoming as an emergent force, helping us escape from rigidity and immobility. Throughout our learning process, we have explored the concept of becoming as a never-ending flow that enables us to creatively imagine better futures. So to get started, I'd love to get some introductions from everyone participating in the panel. So first, let's hear from the 2021 graduates.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alessia Catani. I have a background in cultural studies and a special passion for food, what made me become a food researcher and from now on, a food innovator. My research disciplines are gastronomy, food systems, sustainability, and innovation management.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renwu. I studied English literature and fashion design for my bachelor's degree. And this kind of multidisciplinary background has shaped my development as a researcher who is fascinated by the power of creativity. Here, my research focuses on the innovation capabilities of individuals to explore the relationship between crowds and brands.
Hi, I'm Vrinda Jain. I have a background in leather design, and then I went on to working as a fashion stylist and digital media marketer. I have always been interested in the field, but somehow I found myself questioning the basic fundamentals of fashion, which led me to innovation management as a course. My research revolves around how fashion influencers on Instagram specifically can spread messages and educate Generation Y and Z about social innovation and their social responsibility.
Great, thank you. And let's move on to our industry experts next.
Hi, I'm Ananya Modi. I've done my BFA from Parsons and my postgrad from Institute of Marangoni. I have a brand now called All to Defy, which is an urban wear brand. When I moved back to India, I realized there was a gap in the market, and that's what I wanted to explore and create a niche luxury brand.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alessandra. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering and also an MBI, which is a Master in Business Innovation. My background is full of projects in product management, and right now I'm working in consumer market insights in a food tech in Brazil.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. So we'll start with exploring the concepts of innovation and of becoming, and then we'll dive into the more specific topic of this panel, which is becoming social. So our first question is, what does innovation mean to you and your work?
Innovation to me is the process of improving existing working models or coming up with something new that better serves the target market. For me personally, I feel like it's a very interesting time in the digital space because the way people communicate on social media now has evolved drastically over the years, and now a greater sense of community building is coming across on every social media platform, which as an innovation manager is very interesting for me to study.
I think innovation to me, it means taking actions in tiny inspirations and always asking why when doing ordinary things. And most importantly, I think it means constantly reflecting on the norms and looking for new possibilities. I don't think innovation is necessarily something fancy that has to be carried out in the R&D department of large companies, but instead it's it's a process to which everyone can make contribution.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting because we're starting to hear all these different concepts of what innovation is and how we see it.
I have a similar interpretation than Rang. I think even after 2 years studying in a master named Innovation Management, defining innovation is still a challenge. It's definitely something more complex than just using the word in a marketing campaign. But to summarize some of my thoughts, I think innovation is a process, as Ran said, a process that leads to change, a change of perspective, of interpretation, of behavior. At the end, I think innovation is a social phenomenon that depends on social processes and produces social consequences. It's also about culture and the ability to suggest and identify new meanings that can shape new cultures. And to conclude, in the 21st century, living in the context that we are living, I think we can only consider innovation an innovation if it's an ethical process that respects and brings the values of empathy, care, respect, equality, and diversity.
For me, innovation is problem solving. So finding a problem or a gap and then trying to come up with a solution for that. I think that's innovation.
Yes.
So like for me, for Altify, like when I came back, when I saw the gap in the market, it was filling that gap in and, providing something new while doing so.
For me, it's a new way to approach the problems that we're facing right now. And when I say approach, it means it's a process, it's methodologies, includes tools that we need to use. But it's a little bit deeper than that. It's new ways of thinking, new ways of living. And every innovation, when we put there in the field and we experiment on them, and when they're working or when they go to the market, they also change and transform the way society interacts. So it's also relational. It's not only about the product that you develop, but it's also about the way people interact with it and how it's an enabler for how they interact with each other. So you can see that innovation, it's a new way of approaching things that changes everything around. That's the way I see it.
Absolutely. And I think that really ties in really well to our next question. So I'd love to find out more how within your practice, what is constantly in a state of becoming? And I'll hand that question over to Alessia first.
So I think we are always in states of becoming, individually and collectively. But reflecting about my practice, I think learning is what is especially in a constant state of becoming. As a professional, as a student, as a human being, if we don't take learning as a never-ending process, we will always feel left behind. As history have taught us, the new will always come to challenge the old. This is for sure. But the timing and the context of each person is what will shape and differentiate each individual process of becoming. However, understand, respect, and even value each of that individual processes is one of the difficult but necessary things for us to evolve in systemic and social levels.
I think it's important to become a socially responsible brand, and not just a brand in any form, to become socially responsible, because today your customer is no longer a passive customer. They are actively looking for whether it's garments or whether it's any product that is sustainable, eco-friendly, and is helping the environment or overall the globe in some way or the other.
When I see in my field of work, the state of becoming is like when we're transforming a product or a process. It's not, if we consider that it's finished, we're never evolving it. So we need to understand that there's always room for creativity and innovation, whether in whatever field we're applying innovation and we're applying these tools and methodologies to create new solutions for a better world.
I think becoming is a great concept that connects the past, the present, and also looking to the future. And I think within my practice, one of the most prominent thing that is constantly in a state of becoming is the language people use on digital platforms. Like there are a lot of original words and catchphrases being invented by everyone every day. And also there are a lot of old words but are attached with new meanings by people. And also maybe around a new product or service that has just emerged in the market, there will be a new set of language developed around as well. So I think the becoming of a language also indicate a lot of things, a lot of ideas behind it.
I feel like the only constant in life is change. And the minute you start changing, you start becoming something different. And like Ren rightly said, it links your past, your present, and ultimately affects your future. So I feel like we sometimes, even unconsciously, when we're not realizing it, the process of becoming something else and evolving into something different is already happening as a byproduct of our actions. But I feel like now it's the time to be very conscious and be aware of what you want to become and actively work towards it, especially when considering something like influencers on digital media, because they've built smaller communities where people actually listen to them and wait for their opinions.
So to just kind of follow up on all of your great responses, have you ever become something that you didn't expect to become?
I think you're constantly changing, like Vrinda said rightly, and you're constantly becoming, a newer person or like developing something new. Even in the industry, like where I'm, like, with the brand and everything, you're constantly trying to be true to yourself, but you're also becoming, like, changing with the trends and trying to cater to the market that, you're trying to give the garments and like make them like fulfill their needs. So far, I don't know if I've come to the path where I've become something that I didn't expect to, but I think maybe in the future there'll always be this battle whether to stay true to yourself or become, more commercial, or what the time needs at that point.
I never thought I'd become an innovation manager. I always envisioned myself working as a fashion stylist in a purely aesthetic sense, in terms of like commercially what looks good and what doesn't. But when I started practicing it in real life, I found myself questioning basic fundamentals within the fashion industry, which led me to finding this course. And now I feel like even though I might continue to pursue fashion styling, but because I've almost become an innovation manager now, it will always influence my decision making within the styling industry and will make me consciously take more socially responsible decisions.
I do believe that in life, we quite while become things that we didn't expect to become, consciously or unconsciously. But with this question, I thought about one of my more recent becoming processes. So due to the lockdown and all the situation in here, I had to spend 3 months completely alone here in London. And I know that it was a situation for many people around the globe, but for me, that have always considered myself as a socially dependent of others, I had a really important and great experience being in my own company. It can be silly and simple for many, but at the end, I think I become someone that can enjoy moments, even if alone. And for sure, it wasn't something that I expected to happen with me and something that I expected to become.
I'm an environmental engineer by graduation. So when I got in touch with this innovation mindset and this innovation world, I fell in love with it, because it's a beautiful way to approach things, because it considers the dynamics of everything that is going on and the uncertainty that we're facing. And this, I think this prepares us in a better way to solve problems and to approach the way we live and to create a better future. So when I started becoming that, let's say, when I started becoming an innovator and becoming a creativity specialist, I started to realize that everything is constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't help but cling to the word uncertainty. That's definitely something that really resonates within innovation management. And I think it's really exciting. We definitely are in a position to create our own roles. There's no boundary to that anymore. And I think becoming is such an important aspect of that.
I, like Alessia, took this question on a more personal, or you could say emotional level, because when I reflect on my journey of becoming an innovation manager, I didn't expect myself to become someone with anger, actually. And this anger, when I examine it, it is particularly for the social injustice and also for sexism. And I think at the time I was pretty insecure with this kind of anger building in my heart, especially it's generated in my learning experience. I found it so unexpected that I'm almost like refusing it at the time. But then when I reflect more on this kind of emotion, I think it is this kind of anger that pushed me to take actions and to ask more questions about why this kind of social phenomenon exists at all, and whether there are some actions needed to be taken by us, by every individual to make a change. And I think this kind of emotion could be also understood as a source of innovation as well, because I think sometimes as an innovation manager, it couldn't be everything you do is from like a very reasonable thinking process, but sometimes it's this kind of emotion that push you to make the final decision, or to have this initial idea in your work.
We definitely are constantly in change, right? We're always constantly becoming something different from what we are. It's whether it's personal or professional, even the industry now, it's constantly changing and it's becoming more digital, it's becoming more conscious. I feel the market and today the designers themselves want to reduce their footprint and make garments which are more socially responsible, because that's what people are looking at.
We're obviously not taught to become angry in innovation management, but through the practices that we're taught and the methodologies, we become so critical and start questioning everything to such a great extent that we automatically start getting angered by certain practices in the surroundings. And I think it's that anger which is what fuels us to become more proactive and then be considerate enough to start a dialogue.
Yeah, totally agree.
Whether it's food, whether it's diversity, whether it's feminism, whether it's any other topic that we're talking right now, it's important to consider that we are human. And as humans, we might have different ethnicity, different races, different cultures, different beliefs, but we're the same. So how come we can't approach that considering that we are on the basis of everything, we are human. So this is also important. And I'm glad to hear in all the answers that this is a factor that is taken into consideration in your expectations on what it will be the future when you guys are working with innovation management.
We can now move on to the second part of our discussion, which is more focused on becoming social. So the power of dialogues that are taking place between various actors is the key interest of our main 2021 graduates as they navigate the value of becoming social. So for example, how do they interact with each other? What are their means of innovating new languages and practices? And the first question I'd like to pose to you all is, what is the most significant dialogue that is taking place in your field of work? And what changes have been brought by this dialogue? I'd love to hear from Ananya first.
So I think one of the most important dialogues that is going on in the fashion industry right now is being sustainable, how to make a brand eco-friendly, and how to be a wearer's voice, right? Because whatever you're wearing is your voice. What are you trying to tell the world, whether it's eco-friendly or whether it's addressing a socially conscious, like a social issue. So I think all of these aspects are something that are majorly in highlight right now. And it's about different brands seeing how they can take it and make it their own.
Yeah, I feel like apart from what Ananya pointed about brands becoming more sustainable, as influencers, I feel like they need to consciously choose to promote more sustainable brands. And like they keep coming out with fun videos like 5 ways of wearing one shirt, that is essentially promoting the concept of circular economy, right? Which teaches people to reuse their garments. So instead of putting hashtags like outfit of the day, if they start putting out hashtags like circular economy, then the consumers might actually click on it and learn something new. And I mean, they're learning fashion, but also in a fun way, they're learning a new concept of life.
Alessandra, I'd love to hear more, what is the most significant dialogue for you? And I guess how has it impacted things and different factors around you?
So we're connecting the small organic farmer to our consumers. So it's a direct consumer company. So we're taking all this value that is produced by small farmers, by family farmers, and bringing that to the table of our consumers in a healthy way, with a lot of practicality, and it's easy to use and everything else. But moreover, it's important to understand that by doing that, we are also fomenting this organic farming way of doing things, which is something that here in Brazil is also not new, but it's something that it's not as scalable yet. So we're understanding, and we're also improving the way the income and the way the farmers live. And it's important to have this bottom up example of how can we create new approaches to economy as well. And also I would like to add to what Vrinda said, because we were talking in the first block about becoming something and being able to be whoever you want, to be able to reach your full potential. And it's important to also have the consciousness that we are individuals, but we work as a collective society. So whether it's someone who's using their influence, this is something that is not helpful for the future, for the society. It's something that makes us question and makes us understand that innovation needs an ethical basis, like Alessia said in the beginning as well. We need to understand what is more important for humanity as a whole.
It's about empathy. So the empathy that we have with what surrounds us. So yeah, placing myself also in the food field, I think there are two, similar to what Alessandra already introduced, there are two big important dialogues happening now, and they are directly connected. Of course, depending again in the context that each of these discourses are being explored, they are already brought changes or are in early stage of it. The first one regard the food sustainability and the reflections about the impacts of our daily food consumptions in the environment. So this dialogue are trying to create an awareness about the direct connections that exist between climate crisis and what we decide to put in our plates. It's about reflecting and thinking about the journey that each of the food ingredients that are in our fridge did to arrive there and the impact that they created. And in addition, the dialogue of food sustainability are also trying to communicate the fact there is an urgent need to change our food habits to basically guarantee that it's going to be enough food for an expected population of 10 billion people. It's something that will arrive quite soon. So we simply won't have nutritional food for everyone if we don't build this change. And I think the second important dialogue, and also Alessandra mentioned a little bit about the work that she's looking into, it's about the social responsibility of food. So reflect about the food social sustainability regard the social impact of our food choices. So what people are we valuing with our food consumption? Small farmers produce most of the food people eat. I think it's around 80% in much of the developing world. And they do so on a fraction of the land, using a fraction of the resources compared with large scale businesses. And their work, knowledge, and experience are generally not valued. That makes me reflect about a statement that says something about we need a doctor, like a lawyer, or I don't know, a judge, like few times in life, but we need a farmer 3 times a day, every day. So therefore, both of these dialogues, they emerge in the sense of the importance of thinking about food in systemic and connected ways, and not in chains and lines that have kind of an end, established end. So it's cycles, systems, and it's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of picking some things out from the conversation, we were talking about community, and Ren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that ties really well with your research around crowds and fans. So would love to hear about what are the main significant dialogues that you found in your research and in that field.
Yeah, I think my research resonates a lot with what Alessandra has mentioned about this bottom-up approach, because when a lot of individuals gathers together, they form a crowd, and crowd has a lot of power. So in my research, I think the most significant dialogue happening is the dialogue between crowds and brands. To be specific, I think the dynamic interaction between these two powers is the focus of my inquiry. For example, we have all seen on many digital platforms how K-pop fans would unite themselves and create like different forms of content to support their idols, right? And with their influence on such culture, it is getting more and more direct and substantial. So then brands would pick up this new trend and use the fan support to promote products with their idols' endorsement. And when these products enter the market, consequently, there will be many more people who are not even members of this crowd of fans will be involved in this culture of fetishism and consumerism. It's so to me, it's like a chain reaction of knowledge transformation and also cultural innovation that goes from one actor to another. And with all of them working together, new meanings of product will be created.
I feel like even though our researches and our industries are so different from one another, themes of community and sustainability are what come across in all of our answers. Even though like one industry talks about fashion sustainability and the other about food, the need of the hour is that everyone needs to become more sustainable. Like right now, the fashion industry is has the second largest carbon footprint after the aviation industry. And if changes are not made in the right direction, by 2030, it's predicted that it might overtake the aviation industry also. So, like I feel like even when like a dialogue has started taking place where smaller homegrown brands are becoming more conscious, it's time for other actors such as influencers and the consumers to also start voicing that out very actively on social media so that faster and more immediate actions can be taken for it.
I think it's important also to consider the triple bottom line of sustainability. So we talked here about the environment and the social, and it's also important to talk about the economy. So given all the topics that we talked about in this question, it made me wonder a lot about the income that we're generating and who's receiving this income, how it's the distribution of this income. So this is also something important that we need to consider when we're talking about sustainability. Not only the environmental and the social impacts, but the way we're generating and making our the value stream flow. Is it sustainable as well? Are we talking about giving the same opportunities to everyone? How can we change that? How can we change the system? Not only by the small things that we're doing, but how can we see the change overall? So even connecting to something that we talked before, I see a lot of people talking about the essential workers nowadays because of the pandemic, the essential workers. And what I realized is that they are the most places, they are the ones with the lowest income. So how come that an essential work has a lower income? Is this something that we need to consider and we need to think about when we're talking about sustainability as well? Well, I think it is. And I think we need to see that not only as a big thing that is very far away from us, that it's intangible, that it's utopic, but something that we can change little by little by bringing innovations to the way we do business, to the way we generate this value stream, to the way we connect to the environment, to the social. So this is also the beauty of innovation because it connects everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was good that you bring up the economic side of it as well, because this is really directly connected to the social one. So if we don't value all these essential workers or all these people that are like sometimes really close off from us, and we cannot like build the change completely. Sometimes the change, it's easy and it's really close. We just need to look at it.
So moving on, in their research, the graduates have reflected in various ways on the roles innovation intermediaries have in stimulating, creating, or spreading dialogues for innovation. For you, how do different stakeholders play a role in these processes? And I guess, how can you imagine innovation managers kind of building those bridges? Ran, I'd love to hear from you first.
So as in the example of the fan crowd I just mentioned before, I think this group of people, this community, as a new source of innovation intermediaries, they are innovating like these new meanings and languages and practices that would add significant values to the idols, and therefore making the idols a certain kind of almost cultural symbol. And this is also why these idols can be of attractions for brands. So compared with crowd, who serves as the main source of innovation in this process, I think idols are almost positioned more passively here. But for brands, they must see the crowd behind this idol and understand what kind of meanings are projected and what kind of dialogues are happening behind this crowd, and this would eventually impact their position, the brand's position in this dialogue too.
I feel like earlier there was a hierarchical system where brands came first, then people who endorsed the brands, like your celebrities and influencers, and then the consumer was the last person to receive the information. But I feel like that system is sort of being broken right now. And it's more of like a unilateral approach where all three stakeholders, which are your influencers, their followers, and brands that they endorse, need to have started having a collective conversation. And like Ananya mentioned earlier, a consumer is no longer passive. They very actively voice what they want. A consumer does not like brands which tells them that this is the need that you have right now and this is what we're offering for it. They want to be heard. And I feel like what Alessandra spoke about, the economy, influencers, because of the platform they've reached, especially with the physical promotions declining and digital increasing at such a rapid rate, they've got such a high power of influencing. Every state in India has so many crafts, but designers have sort of strayed away, have gone away from that in trying to cater to the Western market. But I feel like if influencers also start talking about more homegrown brands and more homegrown artisans, then so many job opportunities can be created just by one dialogue started by powerful people on social media.
Yeah, I definitely think like an important part of the whole business setup, like the stakeholder, the customer is a huge part of it. They definitely are the ones sort of, they tell you what they want and you cater to it, keeping your brand aesthetics in mind. But it's very important to, the dialogue and not just be one way or the other, but it's important to be a part of the dialogue. And even you can address dialogues where, like, in our clothes, we use a lot of slogans which sort of address social issues in the society today, right? Like whether it's gender equality or body positivity, to promote all of these, we so that tomorrow when someone is wearing it, you know that this is something that they promote, or this is something that they believe in, which is very important today to sort of spread awareness, whether it's through your garments or whatever way that you feel like you want to do it through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the fashion industry, just as in the food industry, there's so many stakeholders involved. The supply chain is massive, and there's so many that aren't even seen in the end to the final customers.
Yeah, I think the innovation intermediates for me are these figures that they can, while nurturing connections and dialogues, facilitate the exchange of information and knowledge. That can be like the crowds, the influencer, and like specifically in my research during the last months, I investigated the interesting position that cooking chefs they have as the food stakeholders that can create this kind of interactions. So the chef, now being recognized as a food authority, have a great power to stimulate important dialogues within the food system. Their close relationship with important sides of the system, as the final consumers and the producers, they give them this potentiality to stimulate the dialogues for sustainable awareness, for example, in both sides. So their key positioning within the system can generate a positive impact in the practice of like their peers inside kitchens, in restaurant clients, in followers on social media, in the audience on television shows, and it's super important in the process of local producers that are daily fueling their kitchens. So this constant exchange with this variety of stakeholders is what I believe can stimulate the dialogues for sustainable awareness across the system.
When we are considering outside the organization, and when I say outside, I mean like the stakeholders that are involved in our business, I think it's it's related to what Alessia said. So we need to bring closer the farmers and the customers, and so we can understand them, so we can have insights and have a bigger repertoire, a better repertoire on how can we approach that, how can we bring connections, and how can we bring values throughout the value stream. And this is important to guarantee that our commitment to the farmers and to the clients is being held. And it's important. But when we're considering inside the organization, is also something that we need to understand as well. Otherwise, it's just like a new way to approach your client. But we also want to change inside the company, inside the organization, so we can have a more powerful innovation DNA. And in order to do that, we're constantly bringing all the inside stakeholders together, so we can reach them and also try to provoke them to think in a non-linear way. So how everything connects in a non-linear way, because we're talking about a business, an industry. So we're always considering that we have a lot of processes, we have a lot of linear thinking and cause and effect, and we need to approach that in a different way when we're considering the implications of what we're doing. We're considering the impacts that we're having on this ecosystem that we are inserted in. So it's also important to foment the innovation outside by bringing everyone together through these bridges, but also inside, because you need to have this powerful collective initiative inside as well, or else you will have a lot of difficulties and challenges in bringing it outside the organization. So I think it's also important that we talk about what happens inside with this mindset and how innovation gets into our DNA and our culture.
Just to add and sort of link the power of community or power of crowds to sort of the food industry, an example that comes to mind is Masterchef Australia. It's been a loved show for over a decade, and the judges were so famous. But I think about 2 years ago, it was revealed that one of the judges was not paying his restaurant staff and was treating them unethically. And even though the fans on social media loved them for over a decade and became loyal to them and the show, the community had such a strong power that they started a dialogue, and eventually the judges were replaced. So I feel like even though they're so important in their celebrity chefs, right now the consumer is so important that once they come together and start a dialogue, it's very easy and effective for them to create change.
When brands are trying to participate in these kind of dialogues, you have to consider the risks of getting associated and also getting disassociated with a certain kind of crowds, because these crowds are representing a certain kind of cultural indications. And you have to, as brands, I think they have to consider whether this kind of indication fit within their innovation DNA, as Alessandra has mentioned before, and how to involve in these dialogues in a good ways that could make the brand's impact, make the brand's power bigger in when they are participating in this kind of dialogue, because they don't want to be led by this kind of crowd, because when they are being led by a bunch of people, there might be a whole lot of risks coming in for their business. So they'll have to consider when to associate and when to disassociate themselves from this kind of cultural communities.
So our third question in the kind of more specific becoming social discussion is how do you think these dialogues could shape the future, and how relevant do you think being social is going to be in brand building and positioning?
So as I mentioned in the first question, innovation is a social process. We can create the most technological invention, but if people don't adopt it, it's not an innovation at the end. So to bring innovation and to make sure we are evolving towards better futures, we need to create, to stimulate, to spread these dialogues that can foster change. It can happen from the micro to the macro, or the other way around, as they mentioned, can like begin with the crowds, with the influencers, but it needs to happen. So when it comes to the food discussions, there are every day more chefs and food brands that are starting to understand their importance and even more their responsibility in stimulating the dialogues that will shape a more sustainable, accessible, and equal food future. So mobilizing capacities of different entities linked with food systems is what will stimulate process of consciousness and education regarding these critical issues. I think the innovative actions that nurture social dialogues are the ones with the higher legitimacy to generate awareness and consequently build a sustainable change.
I feel like moving forward, being vocal and verbalizing the causes you stand for will be very important. Being social, according to me, is the only way to accelerate and progress in any of our respective industries. Um, a lot of people, I feel, are scared to start a dialogue and become social because of the negative side of it also, which we can't ignore, especially with everyone being so accessible on Instagram and other social media platforms. It's very easy for people to start negative conversations and start trolling one another on social media, which I feel a lot of times stops people from voicing their true opinions. But I feel like since a bigger sense of community is now taking place in the society and like-minded people are connecting and standing for a cause, this is something which will become very, very important even in how brands position themselves in the future when considering their crowds. Um, and I feel like earlier it was more of a monologue where brands used to dictate what a consumer wants, but that's the beauty of a dialogue. A dialogue is between more than one person, right? It's no longer just one person dictating, it's more open communication and sort of being willing to listen to what both the brands and the consumers want. And I feel like brands or influencers who don't do this moving forward would not be able to sustain for very long.
I think brands, for a long time, they've been an expression of status. And right now they are becoming an expression of self. So they need to become social. They need to get closer to the people that they are engaged into the brand. Their consumer, whether it's their consumers, their influencers, or their supporters. So you need to be closer to them to understand what is the expression of self that it's being that is taking place here. So the brand can express that and then gather all this niche together and engage their customers. And I believe that the brands that don't communicate to people anymore, that don't understand the deeper levels of their clients, can have challenges in the forthcoming.
I think, like rightfully, what everyone said, it's very important for any or every brand to become social today, and not just for your customer, but also internally, whether it's your co-workers or whether it's your production team or everyone. You need to be producing ethically too, not just giving an ethical product out. Because whether it's internal or external, in each way, this is the need, and this is how you would be able to grow a brand or grow the industry in the correct direction.
I think being social for brands quite resembles being social for individuals in their daily life, because firstly, it means to stay relevant by conducting this kind of deep social listening. Brands could get to know what's on trend lately, and then by participating themselves in this dialogue, as if they were the party hosts in this kind of process, they will make themselves seen and known by a lot of people, including the influencers and also the crowds. And when they get a better understanding of all these kind of interpreters in this conversation, they will certainly get a differentiation among the competitors in the market.
Great. Any extra thoughts from anyone else?
What I gathered from everyone's research and like everyone's thoughts is that yes, it's very important to be social, but being social can be both positive and negative depending on people's ideologies and beliefs. So I feel like for people who are in a status of power, like your brands and influencers and chefs, it's not just important to be social, but it's important to be consciously social, which ultimately reflects your ethical and your sustainability approach to life.
Yeah, remarkable closure.
Thank you, Vrinda. Yeah, just before we tie up the conversation, I'd love to hear like maybe a 1 sentence or 1 minute from everyone. Kind of what were your main important like highlights that you thought came up during this discussion, and something that you found interesting from another person's answer, or something that you will take away from this discussion. And
so I think the main conclusion we can have from our discussion today is that we can be social and stimulate that, like in many scales, in our daily lives, in our work, in all of our practices. So exchange with people, it's from there that we are gonna learn and be able to build a better future.
I think one of the most fundamental beliefs here about consciously being social is that you have to not only all of us have to recognize the complexity of being human, because when you are having this kind of belief in your mind, in a conversation, you would have a more open and more tolerant mindset to hear about all of the opinions that might be different from yours. And I think this is very, very important as a base for all of the actors to stay true to themselves in a conversation.
I think, like what everyone has said, it sums it up very well. Being social is a holistic view of everything. You can't just look at one aspect. You have to look at your internal, external, everything together as a whole. And only then will it be fruitful. And I think only then can we progress and make changes as a society and on a global or a local level.
I think that being social, it's connected also to our surviving needs, like being in a group, being accepted, the sense of belonging and the sense of ownership, and that leads us to take action individually and collectively. And but I think that when we are inserted in a VUCA world, like in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous context, this changes a little bit the way we can make it relevant. And when I hear everyone here from different parts of the world, from different cultures, people who did their research in different fields, in different industries, talking about the same, not about the same thing, but talking about different perspectives, but that connect with synergy and with harmony, it gives me inspiration that we might be on this on the right path to this innovation awareness. And I think it's great, this initiative of bringing this dialogue, not only because of this event, but to foment these dialogues, because it's when we're working in the business industry, in your daily basis, reaching for results and talking to people and getting insights and creating things, it's also important to have space for this kind of dialogue, because it connects us to the purpose on why we're doing it and how we're doing it and how people are doing it. And it's important that we share this knowledge. So this is also something that I believe in the innovation field. We share perspectives, we share knowledge, we share points of view, we share culture. And it's very important. So this was very enriching to me in this sense.
When I was thinking of being social, it was about how I can start a conversation and start a dialogue. But now I realize a very big and very important part of it is to sometimes just sit back and actually listen to what other people are also saying, because that then teaches you the importance of viewing things from different perspectives and actually understanding something that you probably didn't think of before.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I really, really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. I think we had such rich insights that came out of this. So thank you so much for joining our Becoming Social panel. We wish everyone well on their journey of becoming social, especially the MAME 2021 graduates. So now let's give a round of applause to all of our panelists, and thank you so much for joining us today.